Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a battle of the cool tone palettes. Yes, I'm finally getting around to doing this one. So welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. If you're into eyeshadow palettes, Estee and Catrice, and getting the use out of your makeup the way that I am, then definitely stay tuned because I think this video will be right up your street. I have 4 palettes here today that are all cool toned. Some of these I've told you about many times how much I love these. And I thought it would make for a very interesting battle of the palettes to put these up against one another in 12 different rounds to finally determine what is the best cool tone palette out there. So some of you may already see this coming. You can give your points as we're doing this video along. Maybe you have a different conclusion because of course I am going to be awarding the points in every round according to my preferences. Speaking of preferences, I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone. That greatly skews what I love about makeup and what I don't like. And if you've been with me for a while, then you know that I've been doing this thing for a while, so I know what I like. I have some strong favorites, and this is the cream of the crop, you could say. So if you'd like to join the Snow Angel Club and have more of that goodness in your timeline, then definitely click the subscribe button down below. So what are the 4 palettes we will be featuring today? Number 1 in the red corner is Natascha Denona Glam. Then in the green corner we have the McGrath Mothership 1 Subliminal palette. And this is what the box looks like when you buy it. But I decided to take it out for easy handling. Number 3 in the yellow corner, rest in peace, Urban Decay Naked 2. And BH Cosmetics Love in London is going to be in our blue corner. And this is, of course, also rest in peace. But we'll get to that in a minute. So yes, I'm going to be comparing and contrasting these 4 palettes in today's video for you based on 12 different rounds, a bit like a boxing match. And we're just going to see based on metrics which one is best. So this doesn't really go into like, oh, I love this more than another, or this is my favorite brand. That's not what's part of this. It's really going to be about, is this widely available? What's the color story like? Does it blend well? Like really those kind of things. So, and then of course picking my preferences is how I'm going to be awarding the points. I just went through all of the different categories to make up my mind before sitting down to film this video. And I think this is going to be an interesting roundup. So let me just get started with round number 1. I have my laptop here, so I have all of my notes ready to go. Price point. In the red corner, the Natascha Denona now has gone up in price. When I bought mine, I think it was still around the €65 mark. But by now, these are around 70, so they've definitely gone up in price. You do have to be very careful though. Different retailers have different price points for the Natascha Denona palettes, for sure. Then the green corner, Pat McGrath. This retails for 123 euros on the Pat McGrath official website. And again, with like Natascha Denona, if you buy Pat McGrath through other retailers, you may pay less or more depending on whether a sale is going on. And very often at other retailers, I find that Pat McGrath palettes especially are incredibly marked up. So we'll talk about availability in a minute. So then the yellow corner is the Urban Decay. This used to retail for 55 euros. And then the most affordable one is the BH Cosmetics in the blue corner at $17.50. So I think it's very safe to say that our winner here is going to be the BH Cosmetics because it was just so cheap and cheerful, and yet it gives a really good cool tone color story. So the Love in London from BH Cosmetics gets the first point. Round number 2 then is availability. So where can you buy these? Now the Natascha Denona is quite widely available. There are a lot of retailers that stock Natascha Denona. I have found, however, since I'm in the European Union, in a country that doesn't stock Natascha Denona itself, so Natascha Denona as a brand is not for sale in the Netherlands. There are no Dutch web shops that stock it. The only way I can buy Natascha Denona is if I get it from the UK or from France or the US or Germany or wherever. It's stocked in countries around us, but not where I'm actually from. So that means that I always have to like look for a website that has shipping. Because it's just not available in stores and it's not available on any online websites that have, for instance, next day delivery for me. So for me, what I have found is that Beautylish, even though that is a US website, is quickest if I want to get my hands on the product. And because a lot of EU retailers need to import Natascha Denona, very often they are the ones that mark up the price. And I have found that getting it from Beautylish at US pricing, including the shipping and handling fees, if I'm buying just one palette, it equals out to roughly a similar amount of money if I had to go through something like a Cult Beauty or a Sephora, where I may even be hit with extra shipping fees because I'm just buying the one product. So, because I then don't reach the benchmark for free shipping or whatever. So I have found that Beautylish gets the releases really quickly, a lot earlier than a Cult Beauty or a French Sephora, for instance. And it is roughly around the same price point for me because Beautylish does allow you to calculate your shipping fee at the end of your cart. So, you know, you pay everything up front, and I find them quite affordable. It's much more affordable than when I were to ship the palette to my place and pay the custom fee when it arrives at the border. So that's why I do like to shop Natascha Denona through Beautylish. Secondly, Pat McGrath is, I think, the best available out of all of these. Pat McGrath is for sale here in stores. The brand is now for sale at Douglas. Yay. And I think some Biacorp as well. Maybe it's a Douglas exclusive. I don't know. But I have found that when it comes to price point, I've just mentioned how Pat McGrath is one of those brands that also is quite marked up if you get it through different retailers. I saw this Subliminal palette on Look Fantastic for $137. But the Pat McGrath website does not calculate additional shipping and handling fees. They have free shipping over a certain threshold, and they will pay the custom fee for you. So if you were to buy this at 123 euros from the official Pat McGrath website, then that's what you pay. And I have bought all of my Pat McGrath palettes that I've bought in recent years on deals because their Black Friday deal especially, but also throughout the year, they do regular 25% off discounts, and I feel that that's the best time to get yourself a Pat McGrath Mothership. I ended up paying just over 80 euros for these Moonlit Seduction that I just got. So the Pat McGrath one, you don't have to pay the 125 plus that this goes for on a lot of websites for sure. So I would say Pat McGrath website is best, and they ship globally. So that's great. Of course, the Naked 2 is discontinued, so there isn't much in terms of availability that I can talk to you about here. I did find myself a fresh one on, I think it was Amazon Marketplace or eBay. Now, if you go through resellers, be very careful that it's a legitimate product. What I ended up doing was enter the batch code into a website. I had found that somewhere that you can do that to check whether this was an original Urban Decay palette or not. And mine, because I did buy a backup of the Urban Decay Naked 2 once it was already discontinued. I'm not sure how many of those are still left. Another thing that's good to know is if you're in the EU, it may be very difficult to get your hands on something from a reseller because they tend to just use a regular shipping fee. Like they're usually not just, you know, your mom and pop shops kind of thing, and they don't have any deals for international shipping. So you may end up having to pay 50 euros for shipping if you're not careful. I was lucky to find someone who would do it for like 25 and it was okay. But you may have to pay very high prices for shipping if you do go through a resale market, if it's from the US, for instance. And then, of course, BH Cosmetics also discontinued the Love in London, and they brought back so many of the travel palettes, but not the Love in London, and it's always irked me. So I don't know where you could still get this. If I type in BH Cosmetics Love in London, there are a few websites where it pops up, but then when you click on it, it says it's out of stock. So I know this is no longer being made, so BH Cosmetics Love in London, but I thought it could make for a good comparison to have these two in here because I feel they both offer, like both the Urban Decay and the BH Cosmetics, both offer something that I feel we also get in these more expensive palettes. So that's why I wanted to feature them here. So for me, the winner here would be the Pat McGrath. The Pat McGrath website I have had no issues with. They ship on time. They pay everything up front. I have found, however, that sometimes the cardboard box that the palette is housed in, because the palette is so heavy, We'll get to that in a minute. Kind of flaps around in the box, and then some of my boxes have come a little torn on the edges, but that really doesn't matter to me because it's not the palette itself and the shadows are safe. Number 3 then, grams of product. So how much product do you get in each palette? The Natascha Denona is 19.25 grams of product. Natascha Denona is known for giving you a good amount. Love that. The Pat McGrath is only 13.2 grams of product, and it's actually the least amount of product of any of the palettes I'm talking about today. Then Urban Decay has 12 times 1.3 grams. So if we do the math, it's 15.6 grams of product. And then the blue corner, which is the BH, is 1 gram for each pan. We get 16 pans, and that's 16 grams of product. So here for me, the Natascha Denona red corner is the winner, simply because we get the most product in each pan. And when we go to the 4th round, which is the amount of pans we get in every single palette, the Natascha Denona still takes the cake because we also get 15 pans in the entire palette. So we get quite a few pans, but it's still manageable, and we get about like 1.2, 1.3 grams of product in every pan, which is quite standard for an eyeshadow size. The Pat McGrath only has 10 pans, so technically if it's then 13.2, you do get 1.3 grams of product in every pan, so that's similar to the Urban Decay and the Natascha Denona, even though you do get fewer pans. The Urban Decay has 12 pans, like I mentioned, and the BH Cosmetics is 16 pans. But for me, because we get a little bit more product in every pan, the Natascha Denona still wins, so the red corner gets the point, because the BH Cosmetics only has 1 gram in each pan, so even though you do get more pans, you do get less amount of product overall. Then round number 5, which is the packaging, and I kind of already talked to you about this a little bit. The Natascha Denona is quite sturdy packaging. It's still quite slim as well, so easy to manage. It feels very sturdy, great for travel. We get a mirror, and of course, the unique selling point for me for Natascha Denona palettes is that they can be popped out by sticking a pin in the back, and you can rearrange the color stories, or like I plan to do this year in 2023 at some point, is because I now have 4 of this size eyeshadow palette from Natascha Denona. I think I want to rearrange some of the color stories and sort of make my ultimate Natascha Denona palette out of it. The green corner then, the Pat McGrath, this is how it comes, with a cardboard box that has this very finicky opening, which is why I always take the palettes out before I film when I use these in videos. And then there is the shade names are on the card that you get in there. So throwing this away, I feel, because every palette looks like this, is incredibly cumbersome, but it makes it very big and bulky. The palette is very heavy. We get a beveled mirror in the top lid, and mine looks really weird because I wasn't able to get all of the glue off of it when I took the protector off. And so my mirror has been doing this in the half of the palette where some of the protector is sort of like stuck to it and I can't get it off. So that's why it looks so cloudy. The shadows are nicely protected in here though, and I haven't had Pat McGrath shadows come broken to me at all because of it. This feels very bougie, very extravagant for sure. The Urban Decay Naked 2 comes in this little metal tin, which is packaging that they only did again for the Naked 3, and everything else has come in plastic packaging or cardboard ever since with the Urban Decay Naked line. But I have always liked this. It's sleek, it's easy to use. We get a mirror in there as well. My color story is no longer the original. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, you get 12 shades. It's really quick and easy. I didn't like that snap closure, like all that much. Like that's a bit cumbersome, but it was easy to travel with. I've definitely used this on trips in the past. Then the Love in London is a sleeve with cardboard packaging. We get a mirror in the lid, and then we have the 16 shades right there. This is nice and quick and easy. It's very slim packaging as well. Easy to store, easy to travel with as well. But for me, the palette that takes the cake is, of course, going to be the Natascha Denona because they have the removable pans that none of these other ones have. However, speaking of removing pans, and me showing you sort of the inside of my Naked 2, I have a video up where I've rearranged my Naked 2 and Naked 3 into my perfect cool tone color story, so you'll definitely see this color story in a little bit when we talk about the color story of these palettes. But yeah, my Naked 2 is no longer original because I was able to use a hair dryer to soften up the glue underneath the pans. I show it to you in that video, and I was able to lift them out very easily. I didn't break any shadows. Moving towards the midpoint part of this video, round number 6 is the level of pigmentation we get in here. I feel that Natascha Denona shadows are some of the best pigmented shadows, but still not suffering from not being blendable anymore. So I really like the Natascha Denona formula for that. It's still buildable and easy to work with, but still very pigmented as well. It's like the best of both worlds. In the green corner, the Pat McGrath is really good pigmented shadow, but I find we get some different formulas in there, and some of those are easier to work with than others, and some of them are intended to be more sheer and sort of flaky, toppery things that don't necessarily have the same level of pigmentation as everything else. So I feel in terms of pigmentation, with Pat McGrath palettes, I feel I can only really talk about the mattes, and we only get 3 of those in this palette. Then the Urban Decay Naked 2 has a good formula. It's a little outdated though. It was blendable and buildable, which is one of the reasons why I always liked it, but some of the shimmers in the original palette were quite flaky. Those are some of the ones I got rid of personally when I rearranged it. But yeah, I have always appreciated the Urban Decay Naked formula. I never minded it. I have used their shimmers in my crease and had no issues. Because they are this softer, satiny formula, I felt that they could work in the crease as well as on the lid. So I never had any issues with that. So for me, it's always been a good formula from that point of view. But I think in terms of like true pigmentation, if that's the only thing we're assessing here, I think the BH Cosmetics Love in London is actually on point. This is a great formula. It's soft but blendable. And it's incredibly pigmented. Like some of these shades are quite dark. We'll talk about the color stories in a minute, and I'll hold up each palette more close up. But some of these shades in the bottom row are quite dark. But I feel that even though they're dark, I can very easily like take some of these lighter shades and blend it into those deeper shades to really play with these and work really well. You can see perhaps a little bit from how the pan looks of one of my favorite shades in the palette, which is called Crumpet, that, you know, you do get a bit of kick up and it's quite powdery. But in terms of pigmentation, I think that this is more pigmented than the Natascha Denona, which is why for round 6, level of pigmentation, the BH Cosmetics Love in London is going to get the point. So the blue corner wins this round. Round number 7 is the textures and finishes we get in every single palette here. So I feel that for the Natascha Denona, we do get some different finishes, but there isn't a whole lot of texture going on. And by now, I do like a bit of texture in my shadows. There are some cream to powder formula in the Glam. I think that's actually when she started doing that. That's not everyone's favorite, but I have had no issues using those. The shimmers are all high shine to metallic shimmers, which I like, but there's nothing like sparkly or toppery going on in this one. In the Pat McGrath palette, of course, Pat McGrath is known for doing textures and like different things in the palettes. We get loads of different things in here. We get some mattes, we get some sparkly shades, but I do feel that if you use this palette, you do need to go through a bit of a learning curve to really get the most out of it. But in terms of just like assessing this based on do we get lots of different textures and finishes, the Pat McGrath definitely takes the cake. The Urban Decay didn't have a lot going on in terms of different textures. It was a lot of like same level of shimmer, save for a bit of like flakiness in some of them. And we only got a few mattes, of course. That was what the Naked palettes were known for at the start when these were launched. They didn't have a whole lot of mattes. And those sparkly shades I felt could also fall off the eye. So even though we got a couple of things, it wasn't necessarily on point. So that's why the Urban Decay definitely doesn't get the point here. And then the BH Cosmetic is perhaps the most straightforward in terms of textures and finishes. We just get mattes and shimmers and that's it. So the winner here is going to be Pat McGrath, of course. The green corner wins. We need to assess the matte to shimmer ratio, and I was already talking about it a little bit in the previous round, but the Natascha Denona is quite epic because it has only 5 mattes and 10 shimmers. So I love it for that. The Pat McGrath has 3 mattes, 3 shimmers, and 4 special shades, but the special shades, depending on which Mothership you get, there are different formulas in every single one of them. So if you were interested in some of the Blitz Astral shades that she does, her earlier palettes have more of those than the newer palettes. The newer palettes just have like sparkly shadows in. These are more special, I feel, because this is one of the first palettes she came out with. And it's very overlooked, I feel, but it does have that special formula that she used to do when she first started the line. Then the yellow corner, the Urban Decay has 4 mattes and 8 shimmers originally, but my color story, as you'll see in the next round, is very different. And then we have 7 mattes and 7 shimmers in the blue corner. The BH Cosmetics has that sweet spot of a 50-50 split, but still, we all know what I love personally, which is more shimmers than mattes. So yes, the red corner, the Natascha Denona Glam, gets the point here. So let's talk about color story. So the Glam is a color story that has a lot of grayish taupey tones, but then we also get some like warmer bronzy things, and we get a stunning rose gold in this as well. So there's a bit of warmth in this, but not too much. So there's a little bit of everything here. Now the Pat McGrath has those taupey grayish shades as well. But I find that there is a little bit of warmth here too, also in this gold shade, for instance, and then we get that bright pop of blue, and we get like a matte black and like a satiny champagne. So for me, this is really pretty, and it has that pop of blue, which is actually why I wanted to rope in the BH Cosmetics in this round. So I will pop up a picture on the screen of what the Urban Decay Naked 2 originally looked like, but I feel color story-wise, it was very similar to this. So that's one of the reasons why I have said in the past how color story-wise the Natascha Denona Glam has now replaced my Urban Decay Naked 2 for me, which is why I had no issues rearranging this, plus I have a backup of the original. But I'll make sure to put a picture up on the screen so you can see what it looked like. But mine, now looks like this. I still need to glue the pans back in. I completely forgotten. And I rearranged my Urban Decay Naked 2 and Naked 3 into a ultimate cool tone color story because I was like, wouldn't it be fun to do a project pan with this? So in 2023, this is going to stay in my makeup drawer every month, and I will be updating you on my progress in my Shop My Stashes every month. I don't expect to have any exciting updates next month just yet because I'm very busy filming lots of other looks, but I have kept just 2 mattes in here, and everything else now has a shimmer. But yeah, in the original palette, I think it was no different. There were some of those really weird flaky shades. I didn't love the warm tones that we got in the original Naked 2. I have always shown that palette and showed you how I don't use like the first 4 shades of the palette and like the last 2 shades. So out of a 12 pan palette, there were only like 6 to 8 shadows that I was really using. So that's why it was also time for rearranging that. But yeah, I've always loved the Naked 2 color story, but I feel the Natascha Denona is the more updated version of that. So, at least to me. And then the reason why I wanted to rope this in was that blue in the Pat McGrath palette, because the BH Cosmetics does something similarly. Because we do get that blue here and also this purple. So we get some different pops here. We get a gray, but it's like a bluish gray. It's that steely blue gray, which none of the other palettes have. But I love that in my cool toned, like more smoky looks. Like these kind of shades work really prettily. But we also get some really nice taupes in here. These like lighter shades look very warm in the pan, but I feel that because of the blue shiny background, this looks warmer than it is. Something like this doesn't pull as warm toned on me. In terms of like true warm tones, I feel it's always been like this one. And like this like reddish shade is not as plummy as I'd like it to be. But everything else is neutral to cool, which is why I've always loved it so much. So yeah, the BH Cosmetics is really pretty, and I think that because it has those other pops of something else, just based on the color story, I'm going to give the point to this. Because this is just a little bit of everything. It's got warmth, but it's got the colors, and it's not like a very difficult formula to work with. So this is like the best of both worlds. We've got 3 rounds left. Round number 10, blendability. Natascha Denona, I've already mentioned it. It's one of my favorite formulas to begin with, and that's because it's so easy to blend. So this is definitely one that's up there for me. The Pat McGrath has good blendability, but I've already mentioned that that mainly goes for the mattes in my case. I find that the different shimmer formulas, especially those 4 special shades that it has, can be more difficult to work with. So that's why I do feel that I cannot award the point to that, I should say. The Urban Decay has good blendability, but because of those flaky shimmers, I definitely have to knock down a couple of points. And then the blue corner, the BH Cosmetics, it's easy to blend, but the dark shades can deepen up really, really quickly and make every look quite smoky. And because of that very soft formula, there is a potential of quite a bit of fallout and like sort of like a patch that you then need to blend out. So it's workable, but I feel the Natascha Denona much easier to work with, so the red corner gets the point. Speaking of fallout, that's what round number 11 is all about. So round number 1, fallout with the Natascha Denona. I've never had fallout. Of course you need to tap off your brush, make sure you wear a primer, blah blah blah, but it stays put. No fail. Like, it's just no fallout upon application, and these also don't fall down your eyes if you wear them for an entire day. I love it. The green corner then, there can be a bit of fallout, especially with the more sparkly things, and especially if the Pat McGrath is not applied correctly. Like, let me show you. So you get those 4 more special shades here on the end, and they're very stunning, but you need mattes in your crease to, for instance, get that blue to stay on. And I have also found that this blue can run a little bit when it goes onto your lower lash line. So with the Pat McGrath, I feel there's just a bit too much of a learning curve to really get the most use out of it, especially for how expensive it is. And then the Urban Decay, I have already mentioned the amount of fallout you get from those flaky shimmers. And this is the kind of shimmer formula where you get the flakes of shimmer falling down your cheeks as you're wearing the shadow throughout the day and also upon application. So that's why that definitely doesn't get the point. In the blue corner, because we don't get a lot of textures, I do feel that the BH Cosmetics is therefore quite easy to apply. But because these shades are so pigmented, they do have a chance of being fallouty upon application. You do definitely, with the BH, you need to be very careful to make sure to tap off all the excess off of your brush. Because of the powdery formula, it's easy to just pick up too much. The winner here, no surprise I'm sure, Natascha Denona Glam. And last but not least, how long do these shadows last? I have found that the Natascha Denona is just the longest wearing formula on my eyes for sure. Like, with or without a primer, this just works, no fail. I feel that the Pat McGrath wears similarly, provided you take the necessary steps you need to make them work for your eye shape. So I do like that, but it's not my favorite. And then the Urban Decay, I have found that it wears well, provided I use the right shades from the palette. So there were always a couple of shades in that original palette that I wasn't using, especially those flaky shimmers. With a glitter primer, you can, of course, stick them down, but you do need that extra step. And then the blue corner wears beautifully all day. And what I love about the BH Cosmetics is because those shades can be pretty intense on the eye, but I have experienced nothing of it fading. And for how affordable that formula is, I actually think I want to award the point to the BH Cosmetics here, because it does last really well on the eyes and it stays looking vibrant, and the shimmers keep on looking like shiny and vibrant all day. I went back to that palette in the fall time and I really, really enjoyed it again. So then the general roundup. The Glam palette is the winner of today's video with 6 points overall. I don't think that's unexpected, at least not to me. The Pat McGrath only got 2 points. I really thought I was going to award more points to this, but I don't think it's that perfect, because if I want to go for that cool toned look with a pop of blue, I would go for my BH Cosmetics, which got 4 points. Like, if I want that bluey look, I go for this. No, yeah, I just do. So, sad that you can no longer get it, but know that the Pat McGrath is going to give you similar-ish looks to this. And then the Naked 2 got no points at all, and I think that just goes to show that I made the right decision for myself to rearrange this color story and sort of try and create the ultimate So I think I did the right thing trying to reorganize this color story for myself and sort of creating an ultimate cool tone color story. I'm going to be using this throughout the year, and then after 2023 is done, I'm definitely going to be like throwing this in the bin. These are really old shadows. I'm pretty sure that you could question whether it's safe to use these. I might keep two of my favorite shades, which are YDK and Mugshot over here. I filmed some shorts showing you what those things look like on my eyes. They're two of my favorite one and done shadows. I might put those into a custom like singles palette at some point and just keep those two shades but get rid of the rest of the palette. I think I've had my fun with the Naked 2 and Naked 3. I have two pristine ones in backup, so I have them for the collection, you could say, and these are just some of my OG favorite palettes. I can't help but tell you that about it. So yeah, that's my palette battle for the month of January. I will of course be back with another one of these videos in February for sure. If you have any ideas of palettes that I can put up against each other in a video like this that you know I have, then definitely let me know. I have plenty of ideas, but I always love to see what you guys do as well. People were requesting this, but as you notice, it always takes me a little bit of time to, you know, get things going. But I always like to know what you guys would like to see. So let me know in a comment down below. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. And if you want to shop some of these perfect cool tone palettes in the meantime, then definitely click out my link called Shop My Favorites, because I have a top 10 of favorite cool toned eyeshadow palettes that I've listed on my Shop My Shelf, and if you shop through there, I could make a bit of a commission as well. So I hope you'd like to do that and help out the channel. That would greatly help out. Like, all the bits help here, and because any money I make to, like, also AdSense wise, I put back into the channel. So maybe good to know that that's the way I'm sort of running things by now. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me today. Take care, have a good day, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye!